All this week, we are digging deeper into one of President Joe Biden's key priorities, rebuilding the U.S. infrastructure. Biden proposed a $2 trillion package during his campaign. Bank of America estimates that package alone could boost GDP by 2 to 9% in the short term, but there are concerns about the growing deficit. Let's bring in Steve Demetriou. He is the CEO of Jacobs. We've also got Yahoo Finance's Brian Sozzi joining in on the conversation. Steve, it's great to talk to you. You've been at this a long time, and I imagine you're looking at this saying we have seen past administrations commit to infrastructure only to see them at the end of the term to not really move the needle on the issue. What do you think is different about the opportunity this time around?
Yeah, look, I think if you go back over the last 10 years, both sides of the aisle have been talking about the urgent need for infrastructure. And, unfortunately, they couldn't get across the finish line. I think now there's a generational opportunity under the Biden administration to really move forward. I think the desire is there, the climate change drivers, digital drivers. I think we're going to see some movement here in 2021.
Steve, Brian, good to speak with you. I want to localize a little bit because you are, in fact, headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Texas is really being hit hard right now by the weather. The electrical grid has really been taxed. Taking a step back, what investments in infrastructure would you like to see Texas make, especially off of the events we've been witnessing the past few days?
Right. Look, Texas is only one example of these type of things that are happening across the country. And let me just kind of give you a scene set of where we are right now in the U.S. All conversations obviously start with the urgent need to address the country's aging infrastructure, especially transportation, frustrations, roads, highways, and bridges. But that's only the beginning of the issues because, cities and towns desperately need to modernize schools, upgrade and expand water infrastructure, and many other services. And then you add on top of that, kind of the question you had today, climate change. Creating these crazy issues in Texas and across the globe with, sea level rise in some cities, flooding, bushfires, the fact that throughout the United States, there's also cities and towns that are woefully behind on the whole digitalization that we should have as a country. Great example is some rural communities without poor access to broadband internet. So, we're clearly at a stage where the need for federal infrastructure investment has never been greater.
Yeah, and we've heard that from politicians on both sides of the aisle, really talking about, the need to do this now. I wonder how much is maybe dampened, because we see so many jobs come from investment like this. I wonder how much that might be dampened now that we see the recovery coming back a bit stronger than expected. But as you point out, it's also worthwhile to spend on this stuff now rather than face the consequences later on bridges or rebuilding infrastructure. About $1 spent on pre-disaster mitigation saves the taxpayer $6. So talk to me about what you want to see done most when it comes to what Biden's proposing, what we could see come through here, what needs to be prioritized.
Let me just kind of first start with some philosophical alignment that needs to happen, that this isn't about just throwing money at each of these individual issues that I mentioned. It really creates an opportunity for a modern set of integrated economic, social, and environmental strategies to drive infrastructure investment going forward. It's not about concrete and steel. It's more about connecting urban and suburban communities through multi-purpose infrastructure solutions. And what is going to be very important is to make sure there's enduring social value for these communities. And this is where we've spent a lot of time at Jacobs leading the conversation with infrastructure clients about connected, secure, smart infrastructure, always through our designs or through a lens of social equity, efficient, automated, inclusive, and sustainable solutions, especially supporting the climate change agenda and reinforcing, getting away from the carbon economy. And so you mentioned every dollar spent on pre-disaster mitigation saves the American taxpayer $6. The economics are obviously there, but this is also about saving people's lives and going beyond the traditional economic measures. And it's a big part of what we do at Jacobs.
Yeah, and to your point, Steve, we have seen a shift in the framing of the infrastructure debate here with the Biden administration talking about the impact in terms of looking at sustainability, as well as the ability for infrastructure to add to this conversation about racial equality. You talked about the climate issues really shifting priorities. And I wonder what you're seeing on the transportation front. We have heard for years about the build out on high speed rail, and yet there is so much pushback in individual states at the local level. So how much can federal policy really shape that?
Yeah, I think it can shape it in a great way. And I want to connect sort of two key points you made in your statement, that we're not exactly sure what's going to go into this infrastructure bill, but we really believe the administration is going to focus on social value and equity. And the key is to address and overcome, these entrenched social issues in our communities: reliable and affordable access to education, food, health, utilities, creating meaningful employment opportunities for vulnerable communities. Now, the infrastructure package, we strongly believe, will have a reauthorization of the FAST Act, surface transportation, which is going to give the state DOTs, the Department of Transportation, the stability for large projects to push transport, resilience, intermodalism, critical funding for drinking water and wastewater to meet the growing needs of our country, the electric grid modernization, which is desperately needed to support the growth of our digital industries across the U.S., and of course, broadband and 5G. These are critical areas that came further to light during COVID and tied to this social value and equity and linking underserved areas. This Biden focus that I just described, especially around social value and equity, where we've been a leader in the U.S. and globally for years, water, transportation, environmental justice, decades of experience in these end markets gives us a unique perspective to give our clients solutions.
Steve, you had, exiting your most recent quarter, you had just over $25 billion in backlog. Which project in that backlog, infrastructure project, are you most excited about? And let's say we do get a bill. How does that change the financial makeup of Jacobs?
Yeah, clearly we've been talking about an infrastructure stimulus bill would be an upside. In 2021, we're not depending upon it to meet our guidance that we put out. But as we look into 2022 and beyond, it clearly provides a double-digit profit growth trajectory for Jacobs, along with all the other organic initiatives that we have. The exciting things in our backlog are just really wide-ranging. There's sustainable initiatives across the globe, to address these things around flood control and sea level rise, around the globe. We talk about our critical mission solutions, some of our enterprise intelligent asset management, which we're modernizing and transforming the digital capability of our U.S. military across the globe, or are examples of some exciting things in our backlog.
Yeah, we'll see what comes through when we get that final proposal, final bill. A lot to watch there. But Steve Demetriou, Jacobs CEO, appreciate you coming on here to chat that alongside Yahoo Finance's Brian Sozzi as well. Thanks to you both.